everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 24 of Spy Family. It is the penultimate episode for this season, which is kind of crazy, right? It feels weird. I started watching this back in the summer, and it's been literally 24 weeks. It has been like 6 months of watching Spy Family. Where has the time gone, right? Where has the time gone? But it's finally coming to an end. Now, I know that people on Patreon have told me that there is a second season on the way. Not surprised given how popular the show has been, and that there is a movie underway, which is very interesting too. So I don't know the exact details. I figured after this season was over, I would look up some information about it just because I wanted to get to the end of the season before I looked anything up, just in case, you know, that they'd be like, well, the movie picks up off where such and such left off, and I'd be like, oh no. So I am going to wait till I watch the final episode to do any more like digging into the movie and the season 2 and when it's coming out. But of course, I mean, I would love to see it. But yeah, it's weird to think that this is the penultimate episode. I don't know where they're leading off at. I feel like the stuff with Fiona is setting up things with Yor and her maybe realizing like, what is she in this relationship for? How is this going to affect her and Loid? Like, does she want more than just to be complicit in this fake relationship? Does she want to try for more than that? What is she catching feels? Like, I feel like it's leading to something with her character. We've established Loid is pretty much like, he does not. He's like, no, I'm for the mission, by the mission. But Yor might be feeling something else. So, be interesting, right? To see where we leave off at. But I have some comments I want to talk about before we start this episode that are from episodes 22 and 23. H Banana 7 talked about how Loid and Fiona's tennis costumes could have been based off of an old shoujo anime called Ace no Narai. And here's the thing, I actually think I remember that. Maybe it's because someone had said maybe back in the day Sailor Moon referenced it. I feel like I've heard of that before, an old tennis shoujo. I feel like I've heard of it. It seems like it's in my brain somewhere, and I'm connecting it to Sailor Moon somehow. So something in Sailor Moon, maybe somebody said it was the same reference. I don't know, but it's connecting. I've heard that name before, so that's really interesting. Algumalgum, speaking of things clicking, Algumalgum said that the brothers that were doping in episode 22 when they were in the first underground tennis match, their names sound like anabolic and catabolic. And I was like, oh my God, like anabolic steroids. It's like metabolic processes. I'm like, oh, pa, like face palm to the max. I'm like, that makes so much sense now. And I was like, that's great. So I was like, thank you, Algumalgum, for pointing those punny names out. Those are great. And speaking of punny names, I was a little confused in the episode of why it was G-Phony and T-Phony. I'm like, but they called him Twain for Twilight and Nephalia for Nightfall. So I was like, why is it G-Phony? And Ashley Penn noted that their tennis name is pronounced, Twilight's tennis name is pronounced Garesso, which is G-Phony, and Nightfall's is Tobari or T-Phony. And in the manga, they did say that phony was spelled F-O-N-E-Y instead of P-H, so it was less noticeable that it was a fake name. I'm like, okay, gotcha, that's great. But Ashley Penn also talked about, in relation to what we could get this last 2 set of episodes, is that I forget this, and I'm glad that Ashley Penn kind of reminded me about it, but I forget that Yor, at the beginning of this series, did kind of have low self-esteem. She's this drop-dead gorgeous assassin, and her coworkers kind of belittle her because they say she's not like a proper housewife or housewife material. And I'm like, Yor, honey, you do not need to doubt yourself. You are a 10 out of 10. And I'm like, girl. But yeah, she does kind of think poorly of herself in terms at times of being like an appropriate, normal woman to be a wife for Loid. And so she did say earlier on, and Ashley Penn made note of this, that Yor, talking about Loid, said that, quote, he's probably the only person who could accept me as I am now. So there is a lot riding on her being a good wife for Loid in this mission, not just for the sake of her being able to keep up appearances for her being an assassin, but also because she kind of doesn't know what else to do. She doesn't really have another shot with another guy. Loid seems to be the only one that gets her. So I want it to work out between Loid and Yor, but there's just no chemistry. Loid is not thinking romantically at all. He is the polar opposite of Fiona, and it's frustrating at times, but also very understandable and probably a good thing at this point in the story. And then finally, Alexander Q talked about how we view Fiona and Loid's relationship. And I kind of like how Alexander Q phrased it. It's like you have what Sylvia is to Loid. I feel like Loid is to Fiona, because Sylvia and Loid, I don't ship. I think that they are very close colleagues that there's a bond beyond that, but it's not romantic or sexual. It's just like Sylvia's almost like a big sister to Loid in a lot of ways. Or a parental figure, but not really a parental figure. She seems more like a big sister or a closely in age aunt, right, to Loid. And that kind of seems like how Loid is Fiona. Fiona's almost like a pupil and a little sister to him. And we were talking about how that actually could work out really good with Fiona and Yuri, because Fiona and Yuri, if they're like the little siblings of Loid and Yor, that could further get them together. I'm just saying, feed the crack ship all you want, guys. I'm here for it. 1000%. So those are my comments for this penultimate episode. I'm probably going to wait to watch episode 25 until this episode comes out on Patreon, and episode 23 at least comes out on YouTube, just to see if we get any more comments before the final episode, because I probably won't save any comments from episode 25 for the next season, because who knows when that'll be. So hopefully I'll remember if there's anything that comes up. But I am going to wait a little bit before posting episode 25 just to get those comments. So I hope you all have fun with this episode 24. Thank you all so much for commenting and for the comments, the kind words. But yeah, let's not waste any more time, shall we? I watched episode 23. I waited actually a long time to watch episode 23. I had to procrastinate for various reasons. And so it's not been that long since I've watched the episode, but I honestly couldn't wait. I was like, nope. Episodes 22 and 23 came out today, and I was like, I can't wait. I want to watch it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start episode 24 of Spy Family, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. Oh, what? How is this my favorite episode of maybe the second core? I've said that a lot. It wasn't the funniest episode. It wasn't the most nerve-wracking, tense episode, but just the emotion and the bombs that were dropped onto my heart. I was like, oh my God. So I had to bring Whiteboard Coon out because there was a lot going on in this episode. The Becky and Anya stuff was very straightforward. Straightforward and just cut straight to your core of the nakama of Becky and the influence and impact that Anya's had on her life. And I about cried because it was just so heartwarming and beautiful. But that was not why Whiteboard Coon is needed. No, Loid is why Whiteboard Coon was needed, because he had a bit of a moment, right? He had a moment processing everything going on with Yor. So it's the penultimate episode. Next week is the season finale. We know we're getting a season 2. We know we're getting a movie and all this detailing with it. But with that, I feel like we needed to outline some things. Because as we go into the season finale, because there's little things at work in this episode that I was like, okay, if we're going to go in the season finale, what we going to do? Fiona is not in the picture in the season finale. I don't imagine her in the picture. She's out training in the mountains, scaring bears away, trying to get ready. But Loid doesn't even consider Fiona an option in anything. As this episode details, Loid does not consider Fiona an option in Operation Strix at all. He's like, she's a colleague, nothing more. And he's more concerned with what the hell's up with Yor. And what's up with Yor is a lot of things, right? She's going through a lot of self-doubt, and there's a lot of things at work here. So I wanted to detail like Loid's thinking, right? Loid's thinking in this episode. We're going to just put that right there, right? And not only that, but we need to put Yor over here. And there's going to be like some subcategories. And then I'm going to put Franky over here, right? Because Franky is important in this as well. Because he's our informant. He's our outside guy. He sees things from the outside and gives a third party's opinion. But poor Yor, she has just been like out of it the last several episodes because she just feels like she's not pulling her weight. And she's afraid that Loid is going to abandon her and toss her aside to be with Fiona. That's what she's afraid of. So Yor is aware. In her mind, she is aware that this marriage, in quotation marks, this marriage is a matter of convenience. She is aware that it is not a real relationship. She's just worried. She is worried that she could be the homewrecker, right? That's what Yor's afraid of. She's worried that she is in the way of Loid finding a real wife. And it's not that she wants to be his real wife. That's not it at all. She doesn't necessarily want that. She just is afraid that Loid's going to find someone he's going to fall in love with, and he's stuck with Yor as his wife because she's talked him into, because when they first got into this relationship, he kind of talked her being like, she was kind of like, oh, well, I really need to, be in a relationship with somebody, to help ease my brother's worries and all this, and, help make sure that I'm not, suspicious of anything. And Loid's like, well, I need a wife. So it all worked out at the time, and they've not really touched base on that. It's all just conveniently worked out. But for her, she's like, she knows she's not in a real relationship. She knows this isn't real. She knows it's just for convenience, that she's just doing it so that her brother doesn't worry about her. And so she has some stability and safety and isn't, suspected, which would cause her brother more pain. But she's worried that Loid's going to find someone he's going to fall in love with, and she's going to be in the way, which should be the least of her worries, because we know that that's not Loid's ambition at all. He doesn't want to find a real wife. He wants to keep Yor around because she's not real. So Yor is freaking out for no reason that we, the audience, can see, but she very much sees it as something crazy. And she's like, it never really mattered that I won that tennis match. She's like, Loid, I'm nothing to... She, in her mind, she believes that Loid does not like her. Does not like her romantically. She is very aware of that. And she's like, winning the tennis match wasn't going to matter. He doesn't like me like that. But so if he falls in love, winning a tennis match is going to do nothing. Now the ladies are suspecting that he's cheating on her. And poor Loid, he gets, we've given Loid a hard time because he's handsome. And everybody gives him a hard time in this because he's handsome. The ladies are like, well, he's handsome. Of course he would get cheated on. Of course he would have a bunch of women throwing themselves at him. And then the bartender's like, must suck to be hot. It's like, no. But I can't believe that Loid actually heard all of this. I was like, I kept thinking it was going to be a bunch of miscommunication. Wasn't going to be a big deal. No, Loid heard every ounce of it. And I was like, oh my God. And he's freaking out because they're like, well, look how handsome he is. I guess it's to be expected. Women flock to him like fruit flies. They're like, I hope the missus doesn't sell him off to the secret police like the woman in apartment 15 did to her husband. And Loid's like, no! So he figures out what the miscommunication is. He's like, Yor's concerned about Nightfall? No! He's like, this is not good. So to Loid, he believes that Yor is worried about Fiona. And he wonders if she's jealous. And we're going to put a big question mark by that for now. He's worried about that. And he says, that's not good. He's like, it's bad for my cover because she could mention it to Yuri. And Yuri's like, oh, well, I'll investigate and execute him. And he's like, nope, that would not be good at all. And he's like, I'll get the entire Secret Service on him. And Loid's like, no, he would do that. Which, yes, he would do that. So he's worried. He's worried about Yuri getting involved. Because that would just complicate everything. He's like, ah, damn it, she tells him he's going to show up and it's going to be bad news. So we have the role of a mother and a wife, which is going to relate back to Loid's mom. So it's like, oh, man. So Franky, Scruffy Scruff Scruff. He's like, I've got you cornered now, Bond man. He's King Scruff. Yep, I love it. I love that he's just like playing with her. And then so this show has always, since episode 1, known how to portray kids. And if you've ever played with a child, this is so true. I have babysat kids and we'll be playing a game and then all of a sudden the kid will be like, oh yeah, some blocks. And just go over the blocks and you're like, well, don't you want to keep playing this game? And they're like, nah, I'm going to do this now. And you're like, okay. And so Anya's like, I'm going to draw now. I'm done playing. Bye. It's just like, oh. He's like, well, fine. I'll allow you to use this magic color changing pen that I invented. And she's like, oh. And I even brought a Frisbee for the goodest boy. Awesome. And then Loid's like, okay, thanks for looking after the place. And then he hits Loid with the Frisbee. And I like that Franky's like, how many times do I have to tell you I'm not a babysitter, even though he was doing the best job babysitting, right? So Franky is trying. He tries to say he's not a babysitter, even though he likes and is good at it. And Loid pays him off. He's like, can't you watch her? And he's like, fine, I guess I will if you're paying me $60 an hour. Sure. All right. I love it. And Lloyd's like, this is for the sake of the mission, right? There's a misunderstanding involving my coworker and it's going to affect the mission. And I like that Franky says, well, have your damn family meeting at home. And Loid says, I don't want a kid involved. He's like, I don't want Anya to be in the middle of it. It's hard to talk about these things in front of a child, which good on Loid. He's like, no, he's like, I don't want to talk about, this kind of thing in front of Anya because she doesn't need to hear this, right? He's like, this conversation could turn south when romance and feelings like this are involved. This could turn south quickly. So he does not want to involve Anya because she's a kid. Doesn't want to involve her in it. It's like, okay. And he pays him a lot. He's like, oh, don't think that money's going to solve everything, you damn villain. Even as he takes it, right? He's like, fine. He's like, let's go to the park, kids. Let's enjoy. Borf. And so then, so Yor and him go to this restaurant bar that he has frequented before. I like that they sit right up at the bar. Like, they don't even go to a table. They just sit right at the bar. I'm like, Loid, my dude, no table? Nope, just a bar? Okay. Also, Loid knows how she gets with alcohol. And I was like, dude, not the best move. I'm like, you know that she gets crazy when she drinks. I'm like, okay, Loid. It's fine. But so he takes her to the bar for the conversation. Maybe he thinks that if she has a drink or two, she'll loosen up. I'm like, she does more than loosen up. She kind of gets crazy when she drinks. So he takes her to the bar for conversation. And I like that she gets the Red Queen. Of course she does. And he gets his regular scotch. Oh, buddy. So there is a distinct point between drunk Yor, who remembers nothing, and sober Yor, who remembers everything. So we need to establish where that line gets drawn in this conversation and how much she exactly remembers. Yeah, I'll have my usual scotch. And she's kind of blushy around him. She very much seems tense. And so he says, Loid thanks her. Of course, he looks very handsome with the blue. I like it. I actually like his suit in this. The blue on blue with the stripes actually looks really nice. I like Loid in blue. I like it. I actually like the blue suit better than his green suit that he wears for all the promotional stuff. I like the blue suit better. I think it suits him more. But so, okay. So he thanks Yor for taking care of Anya and doing the chores. I mean, that's a good start, but that's not really what she's upset about. And she's like, oh yeah, cheers. And they like cheers there. And she's like, well, why did he bring me here? What's going on? What does he want to talk about? And of course, she gets the wrong impression. And he's like, oh, thanks for everything. I'll enjoy my life with my new wife now. Good evening, Teehee. I like that he says Teehee in her dream. the actor playing Loid, the fact that he had to say tee is great. So she thinks that Loid brought her to let her go. That this is all like a breakup, right? Which would insinuate that she's been in these situations before where a guy's taken her out to eat and broken up with her. Girl, been there. It's a sucky time, and I don't blame her for feeling paranoid about it. And she's like, I knew it. And so she's freaking out, and he says, oh, by the way, about Fiona. So Loid tries to steer the conversation to Fiona. So he tries to bring up Fiona. He tries to bring her up, but she freaks out. She's like, oh no. And everybody's starting to stare like, what's going on? She's like, no. And she's like, what should I do? This is a problem. And she says, if he ends this relationship, then she's like, well, it was always a marriage of convenience, but I have no right to say anything about Loid's personal life. And Loid's just sitting there like, what do we do? And he's like, she's like, if Loid has romantic feelings for her, that means I'm no longer of use. So she says she has no right to butt into Loid's business. It's his choice. If he wants to be with someone else, there's nothing she can do about it. She was just in this relationship out of convenience, right? And she should just leave. But she doesn't want to leave. That's the thing. She realizes she does not want to leave the family. It's not really romantic feelings, but it's that attachment. She doesn't want to leave them. She's like, no. And she tries to tell Loid, she's like, well, Loid, if this is what you want, I'd be happy to leave. And she's trying to say leave, but she can't do it. She's like, if you want to be with someone else to be happy, then it's fine. But she can't say that she wants to leave. She's like, my throat keeps closing up. The words won't come out. She's like, is it because I want this life to continue? The answer is yes. That's exactly what she wants to happen. And she's like, but you mustn't, Yor. Loid's happiness is more important than protecting yourself. That's the thing that gets me, is that she puts on here that Loid's happiness outweighs her protection. That's a very telling line in itself, because that suggests that down the road, if there's a moment where Loid could be happy, she's going to sacrifice her own protection and her own self to make that happen for him. That is the foundation of a relationship. Whether she realizes it or not. That's love. That's putting someone else's happiness over your own. You know, that's a stage of love. And she just doesn't exactly realize it is the thing. But she just is assuming that she's like, you need to tell him that. And so she's like, give me strength, alcohol! And so at that point, that line there about Loid's happiness is where we have a cutoff. This was sober Yor. And this down here is drunk Yor. And Loid is like, what the hell are we doing? And girl, there is one thing you never do. You don't mix. And she downs an entire bottle of scotch. Nope. He's like, you're going to die if you drink like that. But little does Loid should know by now, her stomach is an iron tank thanks to all them damn meals she's cooked. So how her stomach can handle a bottle of scotch, I get like queasy just thinking about it. But yeah. And she's like, Loid. She's like, who is that woman? Just who is she? Are you in love with her, Loid? And Loid's like, I was just about to explain. So, drunk her questions. She questions Loid's relationship with Fiona. She gets right down to brass tacks. And Loid's like, well, I was about to explain all that. And she's like, so you were in a relationship? And he's like, no. She's like, I just wanted to give you my blessings. What am I even saying? And he's like, calm down. Right? I love that the guy here is like, man. And he's like, she's just a colleague of mine. I promise you our relationship is nothing more than that. And so Loid says that Fiona is just a friend. Nothing more. Just a friend. And I love the bartender's like, being such a hot guy must be rough. And she's like, it's fine. I know I'm a failure. I'm nowhere near as pretty as her. Which I'm like, girl, you're a solid 10. Just so frustrating. So she says that she's a failure and not as pretty as Fiona. I'm like, damn, no. And he's like, have you heard a word that I've been saying? And so he's like, have you been listening to me? And then he says, wait a minute. And Loid says, she says, but you said that before that I was pretty too. Was that a lie? So she wants to know, did Loid lie about her being pretty? She's starting to question whether or not he's been telling the truth the whole time, right? And Loid's like, wait a minute. He's like, I thought she was fearing the end of our contract because she lost faith in her abilities. But that's not it, right? So Loid thought that she was doubting her abilities. But then he questions it further. He's like, I thought she was doubting her abilities, but is she actually jealous? And she's like, are you sick of me? So he questions, is she jealous? And she wonders, is he sick of her? Okay. And so Loid's like, oh no. He's like, is she jealous? And then Loid has a freak out. He has a little bit of a freak out where he questions, he's like, wait, does Yor have romantic feelings for me? The answer, surprisingly, is no. She really doesn't yet. Not that she has acknowledged for herself. She's like, does Yor like me? Like me romantically? Is what he is questioning. He's like, does Yor have romantic feelings? And in 1 second, he calms down. He's like, I'm Twilight. He's like, I am Twilight. Like, I can handle this. In like 0.1 seconds, he's like, I'm Twilight. I've had relationships with countless women for the sake of my mission. I can handle this. And I am amazed that Loid actually made the jump. That he was like, I'm willing to go there for this operation. So he decides to do Operation Honey Trap. Oh my God. Where he tries to woo Yor. He thinks, oh, well, if she is jealous and likes me, then if Yor truly feels this way about me, I have to take advantage of this. And I'm like, no, Loid! But here's the thing. There's a line being drawn here where it's like, is Loid the one developing feelings? And he's just totally in denial? We'll get to that when we talk about the mom story. But about wooing Yor, he decides that he has to take advantage to save the mission. He's like, I've got to woo her. It's for the mission. I've got to do it for the mission. I'm like, Loid! And so he's like, it's time for Operation Honey Trap. And he's like, but I want you to have faith in me. And Yor's like, excuse me? If he had done this to Fiona, she would have spontaneously combusted on the spot. Here's the thing. He never would have considered doing this to Fiona, I don't think. But to Yor, he's like, gotta save this mission. I can't. But here's the thing, too. Honestly, he could, if worse came to worse, he could insert Fiona in there. He could. He explains why he won't later. But they could have found somebody else. If Yor felt like she had to leave the relationship, they could find someone else, theoretically. But he is like, well, I guess I'll have to woo her for the mission. And it's like, but Loid. And he's like, do you hate me now? And Yor's like, oh my God, I wouldn't say that. And like, she's just like, her heart's racing. It's like, after spending so much time by your side, I've realized my true feelings. And she's like, oh my God. And she's like, and she's like, Loid, And then he says, and he looks absolutely petrified as he's saying this. He's like, let's get married for real. He was gonna ask her to marry him. For real. To save Operation Strix. And she's like, But he looks very desperate as he's saying it. He's blushing. Like he's like, I'm asking this woman to marry me. He looks terrified, but also he's blushing. There's a myriad of emotions going on right now. But he was willing to marry her for real. But Yor's like, whoa, too fast. I'm not there. Like, she's like, oh my God. And that's when she like crane kicks him to high heaven. And his face, oh my God. He was like, but because he's a spy and because he's Loid Forger, he manages to land perfectly on his feet. And everybody's like, oh, all right, cool, great, all right, dude, nicely done. And he's like, I was so wrong. The force behind that kick wasn't from embarrassment. That was true rejection. There was not a hint of romantic feelings there. So Loid may have misinterpreted a wee bit. So then Loid realizes that she doesn't, to his knowledge, have romantic feelings. She was telling him to back off too soon. But then he says this line. He's like, I got cocky. I'm so sorry. He assumed and realized he was wrong. But then he makes this other assumption, right? He makes this other deduction where he was like, she's like, oh my God, are you all right? And he's like, but I don't understand. What was that mood of hers just now? He says, did she initiate some high-level reverse trap to get me to initiate honey trap? It's like, no, Loid. Damn it. You two are bakas. Both of you. He questions her methods and almost thinks that she's a spy for a second. And I'm like, well, you're close. You are close. She's in the spy family, so to speak. But no. And Loid is just like, God, that big old whelp on his chin. He's like, calm down. That can't be it. And then she's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I can't let my guard down like that. But yet being with Yor throws me off. So yeah, the idea that Yor throws him off. Gee, I wonder why being with Yor would throw you off. It's almost like you're developing feelings, Loid, but you don't know what those are. Maybe you're catching feelings and you don't realize it. I don't know. And I say that because the very next scene we have is this very beautiful scene where he remembers his mom singing him a lullaby. And it's the same lullaby that Yor sings him. And he like has his head like on her lap. It's a lullaby I used to hear all the time. She says, oh, sweet prince of mine. Y'all, this is like the most romantic moment of like him in her lap as she's singing to him. But because this is Spy Family and it's the funniest damn thing ever, she does what I've done many a time before, where she's like, oh, sweet prince of mine, drift to sleep. And then she says, I don't know the rest of the words. I'm the worst about song lyrics. The worst. I can't remember a song lyric to save my life unless I've heard that song like 1,000 times. It does not sink into my brain. So when she says, I don't know the rest of the words, and she's like half drunk, I'm like, oh girl, been there. I know what that's like. But yeah. But he equates her lullaby to memories of his mom. And he loved his mom, clearly it seems. So, and yeah, and then he realizes that he's in her lap, and then Loid gets embarrassed. And he's like, oh no! He's like, oh! And she's just like, she's still drunk, so she doesn't care, but Loid is embarrassed. He's the flustered one now. She's like, oh, good morning. He's like, where am I? What is this? How long was I out? And she's like, oh, we're at a nearby park. And he's just sitting there like there's equations shooting out of his brain, right? She says, the bartender said that we were being too loud and kicked us out. Says, you've been here about 5 minutes. And Loid's like, I haven't been kicked out like that since my instructor got rough with me. Right? But you're a pretty strong woman. She's like, you've let your guard down too much, Loid. And why was I using her lap as a pillow? Why indeed? And then she says she's sorry. And this time she's a little bit more melancholy, right? She's like, of course you get sick of a muscle-headed woman like me. So she worries. So Yor's thing is that she believes that her strength is connected to a lack of motherly or femininity. Because she's always been really strong and a damn assassin, but she's saying that she's not like this beautiful, feminine, dainty thing that she feels like he would like. She says she's a musclehead. She's too strong, and it would turn him off. And then I love this moment because he just kind of like, he looks at her and thinks about it for a second. And he kind of just ponders, and then he gets really genuine. Like, Loid puts down, the Operation Honey Trap is out of here. All of that. He just kind of like lets that barrier fall and quits being Twilight, quits being Loid, and is just himself. And does what I don't think he's done with any other woman before, and that's that he opens up about something about himself, which is the basis of relationship. And he tells her, he says that, he talks about his own mom. And I love that moment where he says, when I was little, and he tells her, he says that I can't remember her face anymore. I love being in my mother's arms, even on nights when we could have been bombed at any moment. Just having her by my side allowed me to sleep soundly. And so that presence, right, that calming presence, that's kind of what I think Yor could become for him, right? Only not like a mother, but as something else. And he's like, my mother was strong. And Anya tells me all the time that even if she's in danger, her mom will save her, so she'll be okay. So he's like, no, the reason she's able to smile and have fun like that is because you're a safe place for her, Yor. And that face that he makes. So he connects to her the idea that she is strong and a good mother like his own. And it's like, yep. I love this scene so much. And he's like, we agents of the state have been trying to rebuild through our blood, sweat, and tears. And she managed to accomplish that all on her own. And I love that he gives her such praise. He's like, we're spies working to rebuild the world. And you're doing that just by being a strong mother to Anya. Like, you're doing everything that you can in this moment. And it's like, oh my God. And he's like, you're very strong, Yor. And he's like, it's rude to say to an unmarried woman, but you're already a wonderful mother. And he says that she's a strong, good mother. And then Yor says, well, I don't think my strength is the kind that you're talking about. And so she's referring to like the muscle and the brute strength that she has, but she doesn't think that Loid is talking about the same thing as her. And that's, but just this moment between them, he says, I have no intention to replace you. And she's like, what about Fiona? And he's like, well, even if I had asked her to take on the role of Anya's mom, like, she has no parenting skills, right? And so Loid admits that maybe he thought about it at one time, but he's like, no. So he's not planning to replace her. Not planning to replace her. And she says, well, but my only parenting skills are because I've taken care of Yuri. Like, that's the only reason I'm decent at it. She's like, I just tried to do something similar. And he's like, but that's it. That's the point. It's a skill you've been building up since you were little, which makes you unparalleled. So he's like comparing just like how he has been building up to be a spy all of these years, and that's why he's unparalleled as a spy. She is an unparalleled mom. And also an assassin, so she is the best of both worlds, right? He's like, have more confidence in yourself. He's like, I would love you for you to continue being Anya's mother. And of course, she's just like, well, okay. I love that moment between them. He's like, and continue in the role of my wife. And I love that she's like, I humbly accept if you'll continue to have me. And it's so cute. And then he offers her like the tissue for her nose and everything. It's so cute. But like, that's the whole thing, is that Loid brings down that guard and he is himself. And yeah, he still considers this a marriage of convenience. She's not his real wife, but he knows that she's a good presence for Anya and that she is providing a good home and that role and is doing so well in it. And he's like, I don't want you to leave. So yeah, it's this idea that he doesn't want her to leave in that role as Anya's mom. Right? Which, again, we've talked about it. If worse came to worse and he had to leave, he'd probably want to leave Anya in Yor's care. And I think at this point, Yor is okay with that. She would be fine taking on Anya. But, oh my God. Just Loid breaking down the wall and kind of letting her in. I'm like, this episode definitely shows that Yor was not thinking romantically at all. Loid's going there. He thought that was where it was going. Realized he was wrong, but Loid was ready to go. Ready to do whatever was taking for the mission. Oh my God. And then Anya's like, they must be shacking up somewhere. I love that she says that out loud. She thinks that they're flirting. And Franky's like, where'd you learn to talk like that? And she's like, Becky. Mostly from Becky. Becky is teaching Anya some things now, right? And so then Franky asks, do you like your mom and dad? And she says, oh, I love them. And he says, I see. So Franky realizes that Anya loves her parents. And that maybe this is getting to be more than just a mission, right? I think Franky's catching on that this is going to affect Anya one way or another. Anya's super attached to Loid and Yor and views them as her parents and this as a real family. And Franky's like, this is going to be hard. If they have to split up or if Loid leaves once the mission's over, this is going to be bad. I think Franky's realizing this is going to end very, very badly when the mission's over, and Anya's going to be deeply affected by this. I think Franky's starting to see that maybe this wasn't a good idea, and that this is going to affect some lives, and that maybe it already has. And so I think Franky's a little bit onto the wise of it, right? And then they come home, but then Franky gets distracted because Loid has a gigantic lump on his chin where she kicked him. And I love these, like, don't touch it. And Yor's like, oh, well. And she's like, aw. And then we show her in the room. She's like, I never became attached to anyone or anything other than my brother. And yet, I can't let this place go. She doesn't want to leave. Yeah, she likes this family. Anya likes this family. It's getting to be a thing. And it's like, ugh. So then, yeah, the next morning she wakes up and Loid's like, oh my God, you missed all of this? So I'm glad that they had the conversation again while sober. Glad we did that. I'm glad he was like, we had the same conversation all over again. Maybe it wasn't as sentimental, but I'm glad that they went back and had the conversation. Good. So we set up a couple things here. That there is a dorm dance and a social gathering next week. So there's a social gathering next week, meaning that Damien's parents could be there and Anya, her parents could go. We could have a meeting of Desmonds with the Forgers. This could happen. And Anya's still pursuing the Operation Befriend Second Son. She realizes that there's really no other way she's getting Stella's. She's like, nope, Operation Friend is going to happen. And the thing of it is, Becky, she's like, oh, well, don't you... She's like, oh, you're just... How do you admit your love to Damien? Like, it's so hard to tell someone you love them. And Anya, very much like Loid and Yor, is like, love. She's like, I love Papa. I love Mama. I love Peanuts. Of course, Peanuts. She's like, I love cartoons. And she says anime, which is fun. She's like, I love anime. But the second son, I love that she's like, it gets gloomy. And she's like, nope, I don't love him. And he has just a crush, right? So it's funny. And Becky's like, oh, come on. She's like, you're just hiding your feelings. It's okay. So they go on this elaborate shopping trip. I love Martha. Martha, the butler that goes with them. I love it. They're like attendant. And I love that Becky's like, where's Loid? Wherefore art thou, Loid? And they're like, oh, he's not here today. And so Becky's like, I really want to see him. So yeah, girl goes to the poshest place. And I like that Loid is like, the rock bells could be a really valuable... She's like, or the black bells. The black bells could be a valuable ally. So here's this money. And Yor's like, that's a lot for a kid. You let Anya, of all people, spend that money? But they rent out the department store and try on all these fashions. Now, some of the fashions are really cute. I will say, when they first start trying on the outfits, it is to make Damien fall for her. I do really like the peanut dress with the peas. I love that all of her little things get decorated in different ways. It's really cute. And so there was like this, it would look like a beauty magazine. It was like lip reading techniques to let you truly be yourself. Read minds and become more beautiful. Or a special feature on Westalis import brands. A telepath girl styling tutorial. Clothes that get your classmates to love you. Forget about your school uniform. I love that it's Anya's fall collection. And it's about her being a telepath. The Peanuts dress is cute though. It's so funny. I do like, I think of the one that's on the left looks kind of like something from Naruto, where it has like the purple magenta coat. It looks like something off Naruto. I like the middle one the best with the little, with the plaid kind of 70s style orange turtleneck. I would wear the middle outfit. That would be really cute. Some of the other stuff, I do love the graduation caps that are on her. Those are freaking adorable. But yeah, I wouldn't wear any of those. And she's like, oh, perfect, Miss Anya. And then the space one, then they just get more and more ridiculous. And I'm with Anya, though. I am not a shopper. I am the worst person to go shopping with. I want to, like, go in and out, maybe peruse for, like, 5 minutes and be done. Like, I'm an online shopper. I would not be fun to shop with. I'd be like her at the cafe being like, death. But here's the thing. And Becky getting the outfit that looks like yours to try to woo Loid. Girl. But here's the thing. They go and try on shoes and everything. Martha's a good sport and they get all the different things. And Anya's like, I've shot myself to death. And Becky says, oh, are you actually going to die? And Martha's like, you've purchased too many things. And Becky's like, oh, you're still here. And then she says, oh, you didn't buy anything, Anya. And Anya's like, I don't know what I want. And Becky says, oh, well then you didn't enjoy shopping with me, did you? Because we find out from Becky that she's like had people be mean to her all this time and she's never had a friend really because everybody like, nobody wants to hang around with her for more than like a little bit. Because Becky is a lot, but she's also really good. I love her character. And Anya, I love that her face lights up when she's like, oh no, I had fun. Her face lights up and she's like, oh, I did have fun today. And it's like the cutest face. And Becky's like, oh. She's like, this is my first time shopping with a friend. It was Waka Waka. So exciting. And she's like, oh, a friend. And she's like, well then let's just get right back to it. And I love Martha's just sitting there like, okay, Becky, I can see why you like this girl. I can see why you like her. It's very cute. And they end up getting the matching charms. And at first, her dad talks about her only needing the finest things so that she can stand out. And then Anya buys her the charm. And Martha says it would be very rude to not accept this gift. And your dad would totally understand since it was given to you by a friend. And then on their way home while they're sleeping, Martha like reminisces and realizes like all these times Becky's like, Becky before going to the academy, she was very stuck up and kind of like a brat, and the kids didn't like her. And she's like, well, nothing good comes from associating with commoners. And she was kind of like Damien. But then that first episode, she met Anya, or not the first episode, but the first time there, she met Anya, and everything completely changed for the better. And so it's really sweet. She's like, I'm very happy for you, my lady. And I like nearly cried. I was like, that was like getting my heartstrings. I was like, oh my gosh. Like tugging my heartstrings, y'all. It was so sweet. And then of course Loid's like, oh my God, you spent like 100,000 yen on this sheep. And she was like, it's a treasure me and Becky share. It's like, Loid, you gave her the money. You gave her the money. And then he's like, mm-mm. And then they have their charms together. And here's the thing. The thing about it is that they went shopping to go find something to woo Damien over, like she's all that style. And it didn't need it. The happy face that she shows while she's being friends with Becky, that's what woos Damien. And Damien's like, and he like instantly blushes, and they're like, what are you blushing for, Lord Damien? And he's like, nothing. Oh no, I don't have a crush on this girl. No, not at all. Oh my God. So in both scenarios, in both Damien and Loid's case, it's kind of hilarious because you have Damien and Loid who are both like prodigies. Like Loid's a prodigy, Damien's a prodigy. They're both super smart, super good at what they do. But they both, well, Damien has a not so secret crush on Anya, who is kind of like Yor. She doesn't really harbor any romantic feelings towards Damien yet. And Yor doesn't really seem to harbor any romantic feelings towards Loid yet. But there's like seeds planted on Damien and Loid's end, I feel. I honestly, it's funny, the last couple episodes, I was like, I don't think Loid's into anybody at all. And after this one, I'm like, oh, there's maybe something there with him and Yor. So, the big question is, where do we go to from here? I don't know, y'all. I really don't. I'm very fascinated to see what we end up getting between them, and like what we end up getting with Loid and Yor next episode. If we're going to do the family social gathering, if they're actually going to go, if we're going to see the Desmond family, if that's going to be a thing, if that's going to lead to the whole end of term dorm party and the social gathering and the families being there, that would be a great season finale of seeing if Loid is actually going to meet the Desmond father or not. That could be interesting. I don't know if they're going to do it or not. So, but y'all, this episode, so good. So, I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, what you all thought about this episode. I'm so excited for the season finale now, but this episode was maybe my favorite. I tugged at my heartstrings. So, in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with the season finale of Spy Family. Bye.